You know, sometimes when you get together with friends and family and possibly you have a few cocktails, then at some point you just start coming up with all these crazy ideas, like ways to save the world or one thing or another. Well, in today's episode, Tahlia Fischer, she joins me. She's a founder of All Seated in the Barn. It's one of the largest equine rescues in the U.S. Now, I want you to picture this. There's two sisters sitting on the couch watching their favorite show, and of course, these two sisters were drinking wine, and like most people these days, they were on their phones scrolling back and forth. And guess what happens next? I know you can. It's the beginning of her journey. Someone had posted a donkey that was at a slaughter auction, and he only had 12 hours left to be sold, or, yep, that thing. So, after 7 more glasses of wine, did I tell you that they like wine? Well, Tahlia and her sister decided that they needed to rescue him and that Tahlia really, really needed a donkey. So, 45 days later, Kevin arrived and Tahlia fell in love. She really did need a donkey. You know how sometimes when you take a path and you don't know where it's going to take you? Well, she met Kevin in 2018 and the rest is history. Now, let me give you some background. You know the term mi vida loca? Well, or my crazy life? Let's change that a bit. Let's just say su vida loca, her crazy life. Now, it really does take a certain personality to run a rescue. And you've heard that term, stubborn like a mule, or in this one, maybe a donkey. What I like about Tahlia is her heart. Now, she's one of those people that says, let's just do it and we'll figure out later, or it always works out kind of gal. Well, what started out as a donkey is now one of the largest animal rescues in the U.S. They've rescued thousands of animals to date, and the numbers keep growing. Now, she's a force to be reckoned with, and when you hear her story, what All Seated in the Barn has done and is doing, you can't really help but not to be impressed. The programs are coming up to raise funding for these four-legged cuties while they're creative, and they keep this big organization running. So pull up your socks. I'll bet you can use some new ones, and you should check out Tahlia's sock program and get ready for a great gallop, of a story.
For real, 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 for real. Got a bunch of furry friends and I love them all the same. I'm an animal lover, veterinarian is the name. Let's share some pet stories from heartwarming to strange, losses and gains, from wacky to insane. For real. You're now tuned in to For Real with your host, Markakyle.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the For Real podcast. Today, I have an amazing guest who is determined, strong-willed, has a huge heart, and I got a lot more to say, but for further ado, please welcome Tahlia Fischer. Tahlia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
I'm glad to have you. I know you're extremely busy. I mean, I know all the things you're doing, and I know how determined it is. And by the way, I know all the words I said. There's probably about another 100 that I could add to you. I know we don't know each other very well, but I actually kind of know who you are. So
well, thank you.
I'm really, yeah, I don't know if it's all good. But anyways, I'm excited to have you. But I thought we'd do is start off talking about you and how, let's get to the beginning. Oh, by the way, for the guys that are listening, you need to go to her website, All Seated in a Barn. There's a lot of reasons why you want to go there. But I want to tell you, when you go into the about and you go to the who, so Tahlia, just so you know, I think I may have said this the other day when we talked, but that epic thing that you wrote is awesome. I love it.
Thanks.
And a lot of people shouldn't read it, but if you guys are listening, you need to go and read this thing because you hear the entire story, everything, and probably more that's in there. But it's good, but it tells you a lot about you. One of the things I love about that, when you talk, and we'll get into Kevin, but I can tell, and again, we've never said this before, but I can tell you're a big family person. I love people with family because I have a strong family too. So it's cool.
I'm a huge family person. I don't have a big family, but the family I have, we're super close.
Well, it's obvious. You talked about your grandfather. How many sisters do you have? 1 or 2?
I have 2 sisters.
Yeah. You talked about, I think one, I don't know if both of them were in that one. By the way, my dog's going to join in the show too, probably at some point. So don't worry about that.
I'm sorry if they do bark. I unfortunately live in the tiny house on the property, and all the windows, because it's an old farmhouse, face to the parking area. And so if someone that my dogs know or recognize that they like is out front, they tend to do that little bark noise that you hear because they're trying to tell me, our friend is here, our friend is here.
Yeah. Well, trust me, this is an animal show. My dog, who's I can see right now, I'm recording in my house. I can see her on the couch, which she's not supposed to be on, but sitting there looking at me. At
Aw.
some point, she's going to let us know that she's here because she wants to be the star of the show.
Of course, and rightfully so.
Okay, so let's get back to it. So let's start with you. I want to know a little bit about you when you were growing up. Obviously, you must be a horse person, and then let's get to the story of All Seated in the Barn and go from there.
So, well, growing up, wow, that's a very loaded question.
Well, everything I have is loaded, by the way, so let's just go with it.
I wish I could sit here and say that I had this like normal childhood and it was all happy and great and fun. But that is actually a whole entire story on itself. I mean, I grew up in Bakersfield for the most part. Like, how honest do you want me to be? Like, simple, like, hey, I grew up here and then I moved here and then I went back here. Like,
This is your story, not mine. So go for it. Whatever you want to do, it's up to you.
well, I feel like sometimes being a little bit, I'm going to be very honest, but not go too in depth, but just enough so people know that I'm human and can probably relate to it. So I grew up, obviously, a lot of, divorce rate in the United States is pretty darn high. And like that is, my parents got divorced when I was younger. And my dad was actually a cancer surgeon, one of the top cancer surgeons in the country, who's studying under an amazing cancer surgeon named Dr. DeBakey. And so because of that, he was very talented at what he did and very well known. And so my dad, when my parents got divorced, moved to the East Coast to a state called Pennsylvania, where he was taken into Altoona Hospital as the cancer surgeon in that whole area of the East Coast.
Wow.
Well, I stayed living with my mom because I was just always closer to her growing up.
Sure.
But there's always family dynamics. I didn't like that my mom was starting to date. It caused a lot of conflict between my mom and I.
Of course.
And so then I was also bullied really, really bad in school. Because I don't know. I think because I was tall.
Okay.
I mean, at least the word ogre makes me think of a tall person, and that was one of the many names I was called. So it really started getting bad when I got into high school in 9th grade. And it got to the point where I didn't even want to go to school because I was getting threatened to get beat up. People would literally break into my lockers and like take all of my homework and my books and rip them up. So I'd like be walking down like in California, the schools are outside as opposed to the East Coast. A lot of them are inside.
Sure.
So I'd be walking down the covered alleyway to go to my locker. And I would all of a sudden start seeing like papers and stuff ripped up everywhere. And it would end up being my locker that was completely trashed many, many, many times. So then I couldn't turn my homework in and it was this whole mess. And it just got to the point where I just was starting to become such a shell of myself. And, you're getting called ogre by people. And like, it was just not a good mental place for me. So I made the choice at the end of 9th grade to move back to Pennsylvania to live with my dad. So I did. I moved back there, and school-wise, it was good in the sense that, I'm the California girl that just moved back, so people wanted to be
Sure.
friends with me.
And you have blonde hair, and boys are boys.
Exactly. Blue eyes, blonde hair, and I'm tall and I'm from California.
Yeah.
And so it was easier for me to make friends, and I was actually I wasn't made fun of, and I was supportive, and a lot of the friends that I did have were very smart, and I have 4.0s my whole life, and I've been very just school smart. And so I wasn't penalized for being who I was in this case by kids.
Right.
But the flip side to that was my dad was abusive. So I then was enjoying my school life, but going through an abusive home life. And it wasn't until I was about 18 that I got out of it and I moved back to California to live with my mom, which was great. It was fine to do that. I mean, it was sad because I had been dating a guy for 2 years, and the reality is if you're going to move to California and the other one lives in Pennsylvania, it's just not going to work. So we chose to break up and I moved home. And that's when I this part of me that was always told to stay quiet by my family is you need to go to school, you need to do this. And then your path is kind of laid out for you. in a sense, because that's what, my mom was a first generation immigrant. My dad was who he was. So getting a degree and following that straight and narrow path was always, kind of shoved down our throats. But that wasn't who I was. Like at the time I was very artistic. I knew I loved to draw. And so I made the decision to move down to San Diego and just do something really random. And so I did it. I just literally was like, I'm going to San Diego. I want to go to art school and I want to follow this creative aspect that I have in me and see what that can become. Like, maybe do I want to be a clothes designer? Do I want to be a website designer? Like, what do I want to do? Who am I?
Right.
So I moved down to San Diego with all of that going on, only to get into the dorm life, which are all these little apartments with 3 other girls.
What school were you at?
It was the Art Institute of San Diego.
Okay. I'm asking, I want to enter real quick. I just want to interject something.
Yeah.
So my youngest daughter went to San Diego, and I'm here in Texas, went to San Diego State, and she's an artist.
Oh, cool. Wow, that's fun.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of related a little bit.
Yeah.
I wasn't an abusive father. But
No, thank you for not being
she would probably say that just because I was her dad. But no, I wasn't that. But no, literally, and she's an artist today.
Nice.
Yeah.
I appreciate art so much and creativeness.
Sure.
Well, that whole school, Jesus, that became a whole thing in itself.
Yeah, sure.
I'm living with 3 other girls, and you're kind of friends, you're kind of not. It is what it is. So I started noticing that a lot of the furniture in the house, because I brought a lot of stuff. I'm someone that's OCD, and if I move in somewhere, I want it to look like home. So I took.
That's so funny. My daughter is too.
Oh, really? So what little money I had, I was going to Target and the Goodwill and just trying to put like pictures on the wall and just make this crappy little dorm space look semi-inviting and homey, more for my own selfish need.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I started noticing stuff was going missing. And I was like, where is my stuff going? Well, lo and behold, one of my roommates was stealing it and putting it in she had this guy friend group, and she was filling their little dorm with my stuff over time. And I didn't find out until one of the guys in that house, who was kind of an introvert that they weren't really friends with. He was a Hawaiian kid that just would rather focus on school and getting high. And I remember he came one day and he basically told me, your stuff is in our house. You didn't hear it from me. And I immediately called one of my sister's guy friends, who happened to be down in San Diego. And I called one of my best friends outside of school, and we went and knocked on the door. They were not home, but the Hawaiian guy was. So he let us in, and we went and got all of my stuff out of their apartment, out of the dorm. And we went and loaded it up in my car and put it back into our house. And then we all waited. And then there was this huge confrontation. It was all a big thing.
Of course.
So, but then what happened was, the school is expensive, and because of my dad's income, I couldn't get a lot in student loans.
Sure.
And it was maxed out, and my mom couldn't afford to pay what was due in order for me to continue living at the school, living on the school housing, but also going to school at that particular school. So I was kicked out. I was not allowed to come back for the next semester. And that meant that now I have nowhere to live. Well, I was determined. I was like, I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving San Diego.
Wait a minute. You were determined? I would never have guessed that about your personality. Ever.
No, never.
Ever.
I was like, I'm not leaving. I like it down here. And so I literally called my sister. She had a friend from high school that lived down there. So I went and was like kind of sleeping on their floor in their house. And then I went, and her one sister decided to move out, and she was like, do you want to be my roommate? So we got an apartment that we split there in San Diego in Mission Beach, and we moved in together. Well,
MB and OB, I know both of those places.
Yeah. So I moved in with her, and it was all good at first until it wasn't. And I seem to attract people who have life issues, I guess. And she started getting into drugs. I didn't do that stuff. And we just started going separate ways. Well, then one night we were out at a bar, and I met this guy, and Long story short, I came home one night and I had to lock myself in the bathroom because she wanted to literally, in whatever state she was in, she wanted to beat the crap out of me.
Oh, great.
And I was scared. I've never been in a fight outside of, when you're younger and you fight your siblings, and I would never want to be in a fight. And I'm not a confrontational person at all. So I just stayed in the bathroom until she passed out. And then I packed all my stuff up and I left. Well, this meant now I had nowhere to go. So me and this guy essentially lived homeless, and I slept in the back of my truck under a mattress in alleys in San Diego, again, refusing to leave.
Not stubborn or hard?
Yes.
Not at all.
Yep. And so I, would go to my job working as a server. I would bathe myself in gas stations and try to save up money so we could get a little tiny apartment in Hillcrest. And Hillcrest back then is not the same Hillcrest that it is now. And so finally, of months of living on the streets and under bridges, I saved enough money to go move into a tiny apartment in Hillcrest. And so we moved in together, and that is basically where I lived for about a month until this whole other situation happened, which I'm writing a book on, which is almost done, actually. It's this crazy story. We don't have to get into it here because it's insane, but it is my life. And I ended up ultimately, after all of this stuff that goes down, moving back home to California, back to my mom. I stayed there for about a year.
Are you 19 or 20 at this point?
I was 21.
Okay.
And then, so I move home. I'm living there. I get a job as a server at a restaurant in town. And that's when I met the hockey player. And we have a local team here called the Bakersfield Condors. And I was never, growing up, I was so into school and books and, just making sure that I kept my grades that I didn't get into sports or things like that. So I didn't even know, I knew what hockey was. I had no clue we had a hockey team. The last time I had been to a hockey game in our town was back in when I was in 8th grade, and it was called the Bakersfield Fog, and they played on this tiny little ice rink. Well, now we have this huge Rabobank arena with the Bakersfield Condors. It's a whole, they're a AA team, or East Coast, I guess it's called the East Coast League.
Well, wait a minute. So they were called the Fog because, for you guys that don't know California, in that whole valley area, they get what they call the Thule Fog, right? Is that what Yeah.
Yep. We get where we can't even drive because the clouds are so thick and low to the ground.
Yeah.
And so I met this hockey player guy, and
I met a guy.
I met a guy. We hit it off, and he signed on with Long Beach the next year, so I'd go down and visit him all the time. Well, in that interim, I was I felt that pressure. I got to go back to school. What am I going to do? And that's when I had always wanted to go to Colorado. Just my whole life. I just thought it was such a fascinating state, and it was stunning. So I was what am I interested? I enjoy nutrition, So I was okay, I'm going to go to school to be a nutritionist, a dietitian. So I told my mom. My mom, of course, freaked out, and she's like, "You're not moving to Colorado." And I'm like, "Yes, I am. There's no way you're going to stop me." So I applied to Colorado State, Fort Collins. I got accepted, and I left. And I packed up my little U-Haul trailer with whatever I had. The hockey player, he traveled around, so I didn't feel stuck to one place. It was going to be long distance regardless. And I went to Colorado. And I was obviously there to be a registered dietitian because they had one of the top dietitian classes or degrees in the country at the time. And so I went there, and I loved Colorado. It still is one of my favorite states. I had the best experience there. And ultimately, I couldn't afford to go to school there either because I was an out-of-state resident.
Yeah.
That my tuition going into my second year was so insane that I physically could not afford it. And that's when I heard about online college. And I was like, well, shit. Why am I spending a gazillion dollars when I can switch my degree? I've already done all my sciences, your OChems and all the things. So I don't need those to graduate. Now I just need a bunch of these classes that I can do online. And if I do it online, then I can go follow my hockey player boyfriend around. So that's what I did. I got out of it, got out of my apartment.
Oh,
she's joining.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I moved to Peoria,
Well,
Illinois.
that sounds like a great place.
So my 2 dogs and myself packed into that U-Haul van again, and off we went. And so we moved to Peoria, and we lived in a tiny little town next to Peoria called Bartonville. And he played hockey there, and I went and did my online schooling. And then he had to go back home for the summer, and so I went and lived in. There was a guy that played on our team, Manny Legacy. He was in the NHL. He's retired now, but he was like one of the best goalies of all time. So I went and stayed in their home in St. Louis, Missouri for the summer.
This is where I was born, by the way.
Really?
Yeah.
So I went there and stayed in their home for the summer because they were selling it. And it's right there on Lindell Street. There's a huge park, kind of similar to Central Park of New York in St. Louis.
So real quickly, so when he was in the NHL, was he on the Blues, the St. Louis Blues?
Yep.
Yeah, growing up, that was one of our teams we always followed. My brother's now.
You would know who he is then, because he was their head goalie forever.
Yeah.
He's like on the Hall of Fame with Wayne Gretzky and all of that.
I know a lot of I actually know some of those guys.
Nice. It'd be funny if we had some commonalities. I bet we do.
Oh, we have a lot, actually.
And so I lived in their house all summer because they were selling it. So they needed me just to watch everything and water the plants and just make sure the house was good if the real estate agents needed to come by. So I worked right there, right on the golf course. I was the cart girl, and I would go around during the tournament.
Of course you were.
And deliver drinks. And then in the evenings, I would work at Bar Louie as a waitress. Well, the end of the summer was winding down, and that's when I found out that my hockey player boyfriend had been cheating on me. And not just with one girl, but with many, 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 many girls. So it completely crushed my heart. And now I was stuck, and I didn't know what to do because I didn't want to go back home because I felt like my mom and my friends had been warning me that he was cheating on me for so long, but I just didn't want to believe it. And because I loved him. And so he flew out and helped me pack up and drive all the way back to California. And so that's what I did. I drove all the way back to California. And I got a place in San Diego, or not San Diego, in Santa Barbara or Santa Monica, all these Santas. So my sister and I ended up getting an apartment in Santa Monica, and he paid for the first month's rent and deposit because he felt so bad about the position he had put me in. And I moved in, and I worked there on Montana Street at R&D Kitchen.
I was just going to say Montana Street, my favorite street in Santa Monica.
My favorite too. It is so good.
They got all those bungalows right there, and that can control rent. I know all about it.
So we were in one of those controlled rents, and to this day, my sister and I regret ever giving our little apartment up because it was so perfect, and it was on 9th Street.
Yeah.
And it would just be such a gem to have right now. But living there, it was just not me, like everybody, all the servers that worked there at R&D Kitchen were all like wannabe models and actresses. And
Sure.
They were just, want to be pretty and skinny and all the things. And so that just wasn't me and what I was about. So one day I just quit and I left and I went home and I told my mom I'm moving home again. I can't live in this place. And so I moved back home to California. Margot, my sister, found a roommate. My little sister actually moved in with her. She lived in Santa Barbara and wanted to move to Santa Monica. And so that worked out perfect. I moved home, and now here I am back in California, back in Bakersfield in Kern County. So I got a job at a hotel here called the Padre Hotel. And I waited tables and did that whole thing until I was offered a job. Well, I had a friend of mine who approached me about buying a wine bar here in town. And I was like, that's an intriguing idea. I don't know how we're going to afford that because I have no money and you have no money. But we found someone who did want to come in as a silent backer and support us on it because it was an established business and he loved wine himself. So we did that. The three of us went in, got it, and I was 25. And we started running this wine bar. And I loved it because I love wine. That is like my whole thing. I love wine so much. I love the stories. I love the people. I love the industry. I love it all. And so I started running this wine bar, and then I started noticing I was getting these weird phone calls from vendors, like people not being paid. And the whole agreement at this wine bar was I would run it. Like I would be the face running the bar.
You're the front of the house.
I'm front of the house. This girl that was coming in, also my friend at the time, she was going to handle like the books and the accounting and all that kind of stuff. And then the silent backer would just make sure that everything's being run properly. Well, while I'd be setting up and working, we'd get these phone calls like, hey, you have payments due, or this is due, you're not making all this stuff, money's due. I'm like, we have money. I see it. I see what comes in every day. I don't understand. Well, then I start printing out all the reports and I take them to a friend of mine who was an accountant and a bookkeeper. And I said, can you go through all of this, please? So it took him a couple days and he calls me and he goes, you might want to come into my office. Oh, no, shit. So went to his office and he laid everything out and he goes, somebody's stealing a lot of money. And I went, huh. And he goes, so all this money came in and somehow only $46 went in the bank. Where's the rest of it? And I went, good question. So I confronted the girl business partner and she denied everything. So I went and got an attorney and went and had a consultation with him. And he basically said, you need to, if you can, see if you can get out of this and go talk to the owner, tell him what's going on, give him all the information that you have. And so that's what I did. And he let me off and out and said he would handle her and it. So I left and I went and got a job once again as a server at one of my friend's restaurants here in Bakersfield. And I did that. I waited tables and managed there until I had an amazing opportunity by in the liquor industry, there are big suppliers who supply beer, wine, and spirits to all the restaurants, liquor stores, hotels, you name it. Like it all comes from them. And the third largest in the state of California is called Wine Warehouse. And they happened to be looking for a rep to replace a rep that was retiring that had run that territory. I knew nothing about beer. I don't drink beer. I knew nothing about spirits. I do not drink hard alcohol. All I knew was about wine. And that was it. But they needed someone to take that position. So I got hired and I was able to quit my serving job. And I now had what, quote unquote, a real job, with benefits and a consistent pay stream and all the things. And I did that for about 6 years. And I loved it. I built our territory up by 100% year over end. I built it. I put my heart and soul into, building these brands for people that I respected and I loved and I looked up to and all this stuff. And there was one dream job that I had with a supplier on the coast that's called J&L, and they represented all the little guys. So a lot of these brands, like these big suppliers, are owned essentially by big companies. So like the Gallows, and there's all these other big brands that own a ton of little brands in their books. And so this small company finally gave me an offer to come and work for them and manage the territory and help build brands. And so I quit Wine Warehouse, jumped over to J&L, and it was amazing. And I loved it. And I did that and put my heart and soul into building all these little guys, but it just wasn't good enough. The unfortunate thing is our town here in Bakersfield is run by a lot of commercial restaurants. It is really hard to operate as a mom and pop here. It just is. Our town loves their, Roadhouse steakhouses. They love their macaroni grills. They love their TGI Fridays. So if you are a mom and pop that pops up, you've really got to work hard and really got to win the support of the community to stay in business because the big guys just take over everything.
With the exception of those Basque families, what do they have, 4 or 5 of those Basque restaurants, right?
Yeah, but they've been here for like 100 years, so they're like embedded in our community. They're never going to go out of business.
Yeah.
But these big guys come in, and if you try to go up against them with like a mom and pop steakhouse, you're going to lose unless you really have got your ducks in a row. And so my boss was not happy because the difference is between the company I worked for and these big ones is that I can't go into a restaurant and tell them that I will give you your entire bar setup if you let me have all the wines by the glass. And that's what these big guys do. They'll go into the restaurants and say, we'll pay for your whole bar setup, your taps, your everything. You have to give us all of the drinks on your cocktail menu and we want all the wines by the glass. So I lost every single time. And so because of that, because of the growth of all these big corporate restaurants, I can't grow as fast as she thought that I could. So even though I was still every year growing 100%, it wasn't fast enough. And so that is when I kind of fell into this whole rescue world where I rescued Kevin the donkey.
Oh, okay. I would not pause. There's a bigger story here.
Yeah.
For real, 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 for real.
And we'll be right back. We are supported by PrepVet, providing stem cell therapy for pets.
As a pet lover, did you know your pet can benefit from the incredible healing power of stem cell therapy? Prep Therapy offers a groundbreaking solution taken right from your pet's own blood. Say goodbye to joint pain, arthritis, kidney and liver conditions, and more. They'll experience faster recovery, increased vitality, and extended quality of life without the need for surgery or harmful drugs. Put the wag back in their tail and discover Prep Therapy today at PrepVet.com. Save 10% with promo code FurRealPodcast, covered by most pet insurance.
I want to get into you and your sister drinking wine. By the way, wine seems to be a constant story with you.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that and how Kevin came about, because that's the beginning of a long story to go. So let's go with Kevin. How'd that happen?
So I was working as that wine person, selling brands, not making my boss happy because I'm not doing enough. And one night my sister and I are watching The Bachelor, and it was the Chris Soules season. Obviously I was super into it because he's a hot farmer. And we're drinking wine, and my sister's like, oh my God, this donkey is so cute and he's going to ship to slaughter. And I'm like, what? Do they still do that? Because, like, mind you, when I was growing up, I'm part of the generation that was here when the internet got started.
Right.
So I've been here before internet, and I was here when it started.
Right.
And you better believe when it got started and I started typing in and learning about the horse industry, I went down the rabbit hole. I learned all about horse slaughter. I bought every book. I was like obsessed with like, why are they doing this to horses?
Yeah, Talia, hold on one second. I want to get into slaughter. I kind of want to save that to you when you go to Bowie. So I want to get into that. But let's talk about, you guys are looking at this thing. Your sister loves this donkey. And let's kind of talk that story. And then I want to get in, I don't want to go too much into the slaughter thing because a lot of people don't realize it, just like you.
Yeah.
But let's save that for when you get to see your first one. That's a better way to kind of talk about it. Let's do it that way. The first auction, which was, where they're selling them there, and a lot of them go to slaughter from there.
So I end up going, telling my sister I didn't know that was still a thing. And I was like, what am I going to do with a donkey? I've never even met a donkey. I've never pet a donkey. I've never owned a donkey. What am I going to do with a donkey? And my sister's like, I don't know. You're just going to love him. And I'm like, oh my God, is okay. He's like going to be a pet. So I'm texting my friend where I board my 2 horses. And I'm like, what would you charge me if I added a donkey? And he's like, what do they eat? And I said, I don't know. I think hay. And he's like, well, like how much hay? And I'm like, I don't know. They're less than half the size of a horse. So maybe like 3/4 of a flake. And he's like, how about $50 a month? And I'm like, done. So I, have more wine. And at this point, I'm like, fuck it. I look at my sister. I said, let's get the damn donkey. Get the donkey. And so I pay for the donkey, $320. And a month later, he shows up. And I cried when he showed up. I don't know why I cried, but I did. And I hugged him, and he was the cutest thing I'd ever seen in my entire life with his big ol' ears. And he was just so scared. Like he just stood there like a little statue, like, oh my God, where am I? Who are you? Like,
I'm by myself.
Yeah. And the craziest thing happened is that in rescuing this donkey, all of a sudden everybody wanted to come meet the donkey, including my grandpa, who was a World War II vet.
Yeah.
And when he was fighting for the Germans, he packed his guns around on donkeys. So he all of a sudden had all these stories about donkeys that nobody in our family even ever knew were there.
Yeah.
And it was really special. And then that's kind of when my friend Jen was like, oh my God, I've always wanted to rescue horses. And I was like, me too. It's literally been my dream since I was born. And she was like, we should totally do it. And I was like, how? Like, I wouldn't even know where to start. And she's like, we'll just meet at the restaurant, because she was in the industry with me selling and trying to build these brands. And she's like, let's meet at the restaurant. Let's look it up and let's file it and do it ourselves. And I said, done. So we did that. We went to every day after work, we would sit down and type out everything we needed to submit to the IRS to get a nonprofit. and to start this horse rescue. And that's kind of like what led into starting All Seated in the Barn in 2018, which is right before COVID hit.
Right.
So we're rescuing on a very small scale, draining my bank account, because the funny thing is everybody knows when you do even homework assignments in school with a group, at the end of the day, usually one or
One
two
person
out of
does
the
most
group,
of the work.
yes,
Exactly.
does all of it.
Yeah, sure.
And so that's me. What happened was that the vision was good to start a nonprofit, but then I ended up doing everything and draining my money. So I just started putting my heart into what is All Seated in the Barn, because we had to feed the horses and the money had to come from somewhere.
Right.
So I really started paying attention to what other nonprofits were doing on social media. What can I do better? How can I start generating donations so that I'm not living broke 24/7, draining myself, trying to take care of all of these horses and donkeys that we've committed to.
Right. Okay, so at this point, when you're realizing, oh my God, I'm spending this money, how many horses and donkeys do you have? I know you have Kevin.
At the time, we maybe had 20.
Okay, 20 is a lot still, but
Which is a lot still, yes. And the thing, and I didn't know anything. I didn't have any help. I didn't have any support. There was no one guiding me. So everything was just such a learning experience.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just someone that's not going to fail. I'm not going to quit, and I'm determined.
Yeah. Somehow I knew that.
And so that's what led us kind of into COVID, which led me to basically Jen and I, the girl that started the nonprofit with me, so she couldn't go to her bartending job. So she would come out and clean pens with me in the mornings. And we would just sit and talk. And she's such a funny person that she was like, yeah, she'd always tell me these crazy guy adventure stories that she had. And I remember I was like, where do you meet all these guys? And she was like, on Hinge. And I was like, so you're telling me that you go on Hinge and you meet all these guys and then you fly and go hang out with them? And she was like, yeah. She's like, you should get on, even if it's just for entertainment, since we can't really work anyways right now.
Okay, hold on one second. For you guys that are listening that are never been on a dating app, if you're older and haven't done it, Hinge is a dating app. And the girl picks the guy, right?
Yes. Well, or the guy can pick the girl. You're thinking of Tinder.
Oh, no, I'm not thinking of Tinder.
Okay.
I thought Hinge was where everybody's looking, they're swiping left and right, but Hinge was really more controlled by girls. I thought Hinge was, there's one of them.
Is it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Well, that's the one. She told me that was the one that was less about hooking up and more about actually.
That was the other one. Yeah, no, that is not. Hinge is a real dating app, not the other way around.
Yeah. And so during this time, so right in this little segment, it's very small little sliver of time, I happened to open my email one evening and my boss sent me a massive letter. And she said, this is literally right when COVID's about to start, is like kind of winding up and people are unsure and like what's going on. And so she literally sends me an email that says, you can pick your nonprofit or you can pick your job, but you can't do both. And let me know your answer by the morning. Well, that was a no-brainer. So I immediately literally wrote back and said, well, I guess I quit. I'm going to choose my nonprofit. And so then this is when, I'm talking to my friend Jen. I've just quit my job. Now everything's getting shut down. Everyone's getting laid off. I would have lost my job anyways. And this guy happens to start messaging me back on Hinge. And he was really funny and really nice. And so there was like a select group of like 10 volunteers that were all teachers. So they got laid off as well because of COVID. And so that we kind of locked the barn down to the only people that were allowed were the teachers, me, and one other person. And that was it.
Yeah, you guys had your own bubble.
Yeah, we had our own little bubble.
Yeah.
And so I'm talking to this guy, Joe, and he's like, we talked for like 2 weeks. And I happened to say something like, you should totally come out here and live in our bubble, because he said he was such an outdoorsy person. He was hands-on. And I was like, you could help us fix fences, build things. Like, we're all women here. Like, we can definitely use the man strength and the man help.
Sure.
And he said, okay. And weirdly enough, he bought a plane ticket and he flew out, and we went and picked him up at the airport. And he ended up being such a really cool guy that he stayed for 2 weeks and helped us with so much stuff. And he then asked me, do you want to go back to Texas with me? Anyways, I fly back with him to Texas because he wanted to kind of show me his world a little bit. And I'd never been to Texas before. And, you know, we were obviously hitting it off. Like, I liked him. He was a nice guy. He was good looking. He was a hard worker. And so I get to Texas and we're chatting, hanging out. And he's like, have you ever been to this place where you always get your horses out of that ships them to slaughter? And I was like, no, I don't know if I'd honestly want to go. I feel like it'd be really hard. And he was like, well, wouldn't it help you to speak from experience instead of just always just rescuing from somewhere that you've never been? And I was like, I see your point. And he said, when's their next auction? And I said, looked it up and I said, weirdly enough, it's this weekend. And he said, where is it? And I said, it's in Bowie, Texas. And he goes, okay, that's like an hour and 20 minutes from here. Do you want to go? And I said, I mean, I guess if you're going to go with me, then I'll go. Let's go. Like, you're right. I should see it. I should speak from being there, having seen it myself. That way I can really understand the dynamics of it. And so we did. We got in his truck and we headed there. And when we were almost there, I remember we pulled over on the side of the road and I made a video talking about how I was going there and I was going to start a fundraiser. I didn't know what I was going to see. I didn't know what I was going to find, but that if money came in, I would help whoever I could. Well, that video ended up going viral and about $40,000 came in. I had never seen that kind of money in my life. And it's because everyone's sitting at home, everyone's bored, and now there's suddenly entertainment where people feel like we've been sitting inside, we can actually do something, we can help this girl. And so COVID kind of just like brought all these amazing people together to help me do something really beautiful. And I ended up saving like 100 horses that weekend and donkeys. And I was so overwhelmed, so caught off guard by just everything going on. I was a mess. I was crying. I was worn out. And when the dust settled, I remember Monday morning when we drove back to Dallas, I looked at him and I was like, what did I do? What have I done? And I was like, I have so much anxiety right now. Like, where are we going to put these horses and donkeys? How are we going to take care of them? Like, what have I done? Like, the last thing I want to do or be is someone who gets all these rescues and now I can't do right by them, because that's not why you go into rescue, is to do wrong by them.
Right.
And so I made another video pleading for help, just saying like I need help. We need money to basically like now board these horses. We need money for medical care. We need money for all of it. And so money came in, people donated. They were like, we got to support the horses. And it was great. And I felt so supported. And I remember when I flew back home, my 10 volunteers were basically like, what have you done? Like,
Yeah, of course.
What are we going to do? How are we going to take care of all these horses and donkeys?
Now, is this 2018 or 19?
19.
19. And back then, you're doing your videos on Facebook or Instagram? What was back then?
On Instagram.
Instagram. Okay, so Instagram was pretty big at that point. I'm trying to remember when it switched over.
Yeah, it was just Instagram.
Okay.
And so I got home and I remember being there and everybody's like, what are you going to do? Where are you going to put them? And I was like, I don't know. I've got to figure this out. I literally have no idea. And it just so happened that day I went out on a ride and I happened to be going on a horse and this guy pulls up next to me in a truck and I was like, oh my gosh. It was this guy named Nate. And the last time I had seen him was when I worked at the restaurant where I met the hockey player. And he was a bartender and he became one of my sister's best friends. And then we lost touch and I hadn't seen him in many, many, many years. And he was like, what are you doing? I heard you're on the street and you started some horse rescue. And I was like, yeah, we're actually right there. And he's like, oh my God, I'm literally across the street from you. I live in my dad's home. He is in a nursing home now because he's ill and it's on 5 acres and I don't use any of the land. If you want to use it, you can. And I said, are you kidding me? I need your land like right now. And he's like, yeah, no problem. I mean, my dad was a bit of a hoarder, so there's a lot to clean up over there, but you want to go see it right now? So I rode the horse over and sure enough, his dad was definitely a hoarder. a lot of trash and junk everywhere on this 5 acres. So I went back to the volunteers and them, and I said, look, I have a place to put them, but we're all going to have to work together and clean up this property, and we can literally use 5 acres. And so we did. We all banded together. We went and cleaned it up. We cleaned everything up. And over 2.5, 3 days, we made many, many, many dump runs. And we cleaned the whole thing up, went to Lowe's, Home Depot, all the tractor supplies. We bought every single pallet in this damn town. And we built we always call it a city. So we built this city. And there were stalls and paddocks and runs, and we used shade cells to shade all the pens. We bought troughs and buckets. I mean, we set it up so that we could intake this massive group and have somewhere to put them safely. And so we did that. And the beautiful thing is, so many rescues reached out to take in donkeys and horses. So we really ended up with not many, because so many people were like, we want to help. We want to help. We'll take, 30 donkeys. We'll take 10 horses. So when all was said and done, we didn't end up with much. Well, I went back the next month with the guy, and we did it again. We did like 80. Did the same thing. People were watching because it was the only thing to watch on social media, and we brought them back to California. A lot of rescues and sanctuaries stepped up, and we did the best that we could to just do right by every horse and donkey that we took in. And it just kind of morphed. It was a big lesson. I learned a lot because, obviously if you're put under pressure, you're either going to break or you're going to make it. And again, the determination part of me was like, I'm not going to fail. We're going to figure this out. Even if I have to work 24/7, we're going to make this work. And we did. We called it Donkeyville. We built it up. We had Red Barn. We built it up. And then because we needed even more space for this next group, we ended up finding, through mutual friends, a guy had 10 acres in Bakersfield that he wasn't using and that we could rent for $600 a month. And it had water, it had power. So we basically built another city that we called the Middle East, because it was a barren piece of land with no trees. And if you know Bakersfield, it gets really hot in the summer.
Oh, I know Bakersfield well. And there's not a lot of trees in Bakersfield, really.
No. And especially on this guy's plot of land, there's not a single tree. So it was just stagnant hot. There's just an oil derrick sitting in the middle of it. And thank God it didn't work until the very end. And so it became what it was. We all banded together. We got more volunteers. I hired 2 people on to come help me clean stalls, because at that one property we had over 70 animals, and 2 people, me and Jacob and a couple volunteers, could not physically clean 70 stalls and feed and water 24/7 every single day. Like, you just can't. You can't physically do that to yourself. And that's kind of that. We grew. We're learning.
Okay, but let's pause for a sec. So a couple things.
Yeah.
So, I want to kind of put this together because there's more to it than what you're saying. So first off, you start off with Kevin, you move forward, you find all this land there, but it's not just feeding horses and donkeys and cleaning stalls.
Right.
You got to learn how to quarantine them.
Yep.
You've got to learn all the vet stuff. Even though you may have had a couple horses, you've had to learn all that. So add a little bit, because there's a lot more flavor or more, a lot more steps. And they came in, we've got some stalls, we did this, by the way, which I know is a lot of work, but there's a lot more to it. And you've had to figure out all that stuff on your own. Right.
Nothing. And like I said, in the rescue world at that time, there's no one offering help.
Well, it's kind of a competition a little bit in a weird way.
Everyone. Yeah. Yeah. So there's no one saying like, hey, do you know what vetting is? Do you know what to look for? Do you know what a horse with a bad knee looks like? If I've never known any of this, I don't know what I don't know, and I don't know what I'm looking at. So there's just like so much that I had to learn, like you said, from the quarantine, from proper vetting, from which medicines to use, from trainers to, there's just so much to, what does Cushing's look like? What does a colicking horse look like? What's the difference between a gas colic and actually like they're twisting? Like what color are the gums? How do you tell they're dehydrated? What does a foundered horse look like? There's so much that goes into it.
I know, and that's the thing that I find really amazing. I'm of this philosophy. Sometimes it's better not to know, because if you'd known everything, you may not have got where you were.
Right.
So, and you jump in with both feet and your arms and your nose and all that, and all of a sudden you're surrounded by all this stuff, and you've got to learn it fast. That's the other thing too. It's not like you had a lot of time to figure it out, even though you keep touching yourself by getting more and more animals. So it is what it is. But I just I just want people to understand that what you do, even though everything you were saying earlier, it sounds really difficult, it's a lot more difficult than that.
Yeah, it's so hard. It's so hard.
And there's the fundraising part too, which is a full-time job.
Oh my God. And then, you have to add fundraising into all of that and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. You've got to earn, it's fundraising. You've got to earn people's trust.
Right.
People want to help, but they don't know. Like, are you actually going to use my $10 and do what you say you're going to do with it? Or are you just going to take it? Like, they want to see results, and that trust takes time to build up.
Sure.
To be able to, get returning donors, to get people that want to sign up for a $20 a month sponsorship. And that is hard freaking work to earn people's trust. It is the hardest.
Couple things. So one thing that one of the things, like when I said at the beginning, in reading that whole epic story you wrote, a lot of things I took from it. One is, and I'm going to say this, and I mean this in a positive way, there's an innocence there that really, when I thought about it deeper, it's more like honesty. Here it is, this is what it is. And that's what I really appreciate about what you're doing, because it is what it is. And you just went in there like the knucklehead that you are and just did all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
But, the fact that you're doing it, and, it's funny because on my social media, because everything's animal related, all your ads come up and all that stuff too.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we had talked about the other day is, and we have a really good friend who's actually that's been on the podcast, Don Olivieri, but there's a lot of smaller rescues out there. And I want to get to the size of yours and talk about why you shouldn't be concerned about the size if you know how legitimate they are. I want to talk about that.
Right.
But I also want to talk about a little bit, and this is not meant in a negative way whatsoever, but there is competition with all the different smaller groups, because everybody's trying to get money, and they're afraid that if they support you, they may lose some of their funding.
Right.
Because they live by their funding. So can you kind of dig into that a little bit? And also comparing the small and where you are and why you guys are trustworthy and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it is. It's hard, right? Because it's like in your brain, you're like, how many horse people are there that actually want to donate to horse rescues?
Right.
Like, how big is that pot? Nobody knows. So it's like, it's terrifying where rescues don't want to talk about other rescues because, well, what if they end up taking my donations and then I can't fundraise and I won't get the funding I need?
Right.
But really, there's strength in working together, because there's millions of people all over the world that it's just in how hard you want to push and work to get out there and get to these people. I have not, like, I don't know the right way to say it, but like, I haven't, every time I've been afraid to like reach out and like work with a rescue because I don't know if it's going to affect me or not, it ends up only being a positive for both parties.
Of course.
I have yet to see the negative side that people are afraid of. So, but yeah, it's a rightful fear.
Of course. I mean, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And then once you jump in the way you did, and most of the rescues that I've ever talked to, everybody's 120, not 100% committed, they're 125% committed. It's a hard job. You're working hard, and then all of a sudden you run out of funding. Then it's even more, and it's scary at the same time.
Yeah, it's terrifying because, I mean, any nonprofit in any sector, you run on donations. So at any point, those donations could stop for whatever reason.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if you're a horse rescue or you're raising money to help kids or whatever that is, or feed the homeless. If those donations stop, you're done.
Right.
And the scariest part is when you're working with animals, they are in your care, which means if your donations stop, now what happens to these animals? It's not
right. That's another thing.
One thing, if you're raising money to feed the homeless, if the donations stop, well, we don't have food to give them, but the county's not going to let them ultimately starve to death. There's, food kitchens and things like that. But literally, if you have 100 animals and those donations stop and there's no government funding for rescues and sanctuaries, now who's going to feed them? Where's that money going to come from?
Well, they're your children at this point. They're not adults.
Yes.
That's the
And
thing.
you're invested in them.
Right.
So it's not just easy to be like, oh yeah, take, these 5 donkeys over here, but those are my children. Like, no, you're not taking them. I'll do whatever needs to be done. You need me to go on whatever those sites are what is it? Onlyfans. If I've got to do it, I'm going to do it.
Wait, was it you? I was just reading about some rescue. Oh, I know what it is. It's, and I think Dawn may know these people. It's a place out in Palm Springs. It's a hotel you stay. It's like a place to stay, but it's also an animal sanctuary, and all their animals are on OnlyFans.
What? That's amazing.
Oh yeah, I'll send you a text. I can't remember the name. It's something.
Oh my gosh.
Desert something or another. And I'm reading this thing going, that was so clever that they're putting them on. I don't know if they're making any money on it because I'm going to reach out for them to be on the podcast. But I thought, what a clever idea. They'll put them on, and they are actually on OnlyFans. They got so-and-so on OnlyFans.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good idea.
Yeah, you should do it.
I'm probably going to as soon as when we get off of this recording, if you can send me their link, I would love to go look and see what they're doing and get inspired by this.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm here for, to inspire you.
Thank you. It comes from many different directions.
Oh yeah. But anyways, let's get back. So there's all these smaller ones, but you've now grown. How many animals do you guys have now?
We are right under 500.
Yeah. Okay. This is from Kevin to 500.
Right.
Yeah, because there's no slow speed for you, obviously.
No, there's not. Because, I never started this nonprofit to stay small. I never just wanted to start a horse rescue, to like, I'm just going to have 10 horses. I'm going to take care of the rest of my life. Like, I don't go into something with that mentality. I'm kind of like one of those all or nothing that
right.
If I'm going to go in and start a rescue, then I want to create a rescue that can help horses, as many as it possibly can.
Well, yeah, sure. But I mean, at some point, numbers add up pretty quick. So in your space, can you take more? I mean, when I talk to you, next time I talk to you, you're going to have 1,000?
Hopefully not, unless if it's in a year from now, maybe. But no, so that's the thing. As we're growing, that's always the concern. Space.
Right. Sure.
Space. And space means money.
Right.
So for us, as we slowly grow, and I know what our budget is because I don't manage the books. Hell no. But we have regular meetings. So if I can see in the budget and our projections, hey, we're going to have an excess of cash where we're above a certain threshold. So if you need to make any bigger decisions, you can. Then that gives me the green light to be like, okay, let's start looking at either rental properties that could be a good rent, because in Texas you can find good properties for $4,000 a month that are on many, 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 many acres.
Right.
So let's start looking for that. Or do we know someone that will back a property loan that we can make mortgage payments to?
Wait a minute. You said Texas. Do you have some in Texas now?
Yeah, quite a few.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought you were just in California.
Oh God, no. No, in California we only have like 130 here.
So where in Texas are you?
So we are around Weatherford.
Yeah.
Around Stephenville and around Bowie.
So all in the roughly Dallas
Correct.
area.
Yep. And so, because that's the thing, what I found is when you start rescuing, you need a place to quarantine them.
Right.
Well, everybody back there charges around $500 to $600 a head. So you do the math. If you have 30 horses in quarantine, why aren't you just renting a property?
Right.
So for me, it just hit that point where I was like, okay, we need to just start renting, because I'm not going to be sending this guy $12,000 every single month. This is insanity.
Right.
And so we found an amazing place, and that was our first rental that we're still renting today. It holds around 70 horses and a couple donkeys, and has become kind of a retirement center for horses that can't be ridden anymore and just need to be pasture horses.
Sure.
And then we outgrew that one, within a year to a year and a half, and then we needed another space. And so that's where we have our RST property, which is on 55 acres.
RST, what's RST?
It stands for Red Sparrow Things, which really makes no sense. But again, there's a story on the website that explains all of that. And it's a special place that has evolved and continues to evolve, but it has almost started operating now as like our quarantine spot. So the horses, once they leave the auction, they either go there or they go to a vet hospital, or they go to now a third spot, which is a guy that works with us. And he's got 100 acres that we can use. We have to obviously pay board, but it's very small. But he can take a lot of the wilder horses and just turn them out on the 100 acres. And he's got the chute system. So if they need to get brought up for doctoring while they're there for quarantine, they can, and it's safe and all the things. And so then we've got another one that's like another retirement sanctuary as well. Taylor, she's amazing. So she's got like horses at her house that are like more special needs as terms of medication and feed goes. But then she also manages a big 20-acre parcel that has a bunch of horses out on it as well. And so between all the properties back there, we're starting to hit that threshold right now where we need to start looking for another rental. Except this one is going to have to be at least 100 acres or more, just because we outgrew the 55 acres in about a year and a half. And then we're also, thank God, renting this huge piece of land right across the street from us in California from the oil companies. And we can basically expand massively here.
Yeah, because they can't do anything on those oil where all those oil wells are anyway. So that's great. Great use.
There's only 2 oil derricks on this huge, I think it's about 100 acres. One owns the land rights and one owns the mineral rights. And there's nothing to be built there. You can't build on it. So they're letting us lease it for $100 a year.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no water on it. So everything we've built massive water holding tanks. But the cool thing is it may not have water on it, but we're allowed to source our water from the oil companies' orchards that they own for free.
So here's what I thought while we're talking. So if I'm out there listening, and I hear you've got 500 right now, and I know, and you do adoptions and a lot of things too.
Yeah.
Can you explain to people why there's so many horses available? And let's talk a little bit about slaughter. Don't go into too much detail because we could talk forever. And also, I know owners that probably shouldn't have been owners and all that. Walk everybody through why there's so many horses available.
So ultimately, what happens is everybody wants a horse because they want to ride. It's very slim that you ever see horses. People go, I just want a backyard pet. Mostly people want horses to ride, whether riding means at rodeos to buck them, race horses, performance horses, trail horses, therapy horses. Ultimately, people's expectations of a horse is we need to sit on your back and we need to be able to move around at the very least at a walk. Now, within that, horses can become crippled. They can become unsound, which is crippled.
Right.
Where they can't support a rider on their back. And people now have no use for that horse. So where do those horses go? There's not like some animal shelter around the country that specializes in taking in horses like there is for dogs and cats. So because that doesn't exist, what does exist, because it's an easy out for the country, for the government, is there are export facilities of horses to go to Mexico for slaughter.
Mexico or Canada still does it too, right?
Canada too, but most go to Mexico.
Okay. And by the way, so just so you understand, it's illegal. It used to be legal here in the U.S. So it's legal only as far as I know. Well, here in our part of the world is Mexico and some in Canada. And that's a whole nother money-making scheme thing too, which is aside from the horrible thing, there's a dirty side of that business. And I don't want to get into all that, but I want to address that.
So interesting enough, it's actually legal to slaughter horses in the United States.
Oh, it is?
It is. So they couldn't make it illegal because horses are livestock. And if they made it illegal to slaughter horses, that would be too slippery of a slope to slaughtering cows and pigs and chickens and all the things that are also livestock.
So why isn't it done?
They banned the commercial transportation of horse meat.
Ah, okay.
And that shut the plants down.
Okay, well, that makes sense. Smart.
Yeah, so that's what the government did to get around that. So essentially why there's so many horses is because if people can't ride horses, they have no use for them. They end up basically at these shipping to slaughter facilities because they'll pay you for them. And there's a business there. There's a lot of people who make money off scrolling Facebook and Craigslist for horses that people just need to get rid of because they don't want to pay for the feed anymore and the care because they can't ride them anymore.
Right.
And imagine if your family, like let's say your dad or mom died and your mom or dad owns a couple horses. Well, now the family's inheriting these older horses they can't ride, and they also didn't financially expect to have to take care of them. So they naturally put them on Craigslist or Facebook. And then these horse traders see that, buy them cheap, and then run them to the next sale, make quick money, or take them directly to these slaughter places where they ship them for slaughter, and they'll pay them per pound.
Right. So let me ask you a question, because I'm sure I didn't ask Don this. During COVID, when you were doing this, was there an uptake of more horses being available or actually after COVID? So people got horses during COVID, like a lot of people got dogs and cats. Did they also get more horses? And then all of a sudden there was a big uptick once the kind of COVID thing got over? Do you know?
I don't think so. It's it's consistently stayed the same. I mean,
wow.
I haven't noticed much of a change. Like there's always, even back then at the auctions, between 400 to 700 horses consistently every single month.
It's crazy to me. I mean, well, I know, again, for the listeners, so there are a bunch of wild horses, and they call them burros, but they're donkeys out in there, and they're limited to having so many. And so the BLM or whoever's in controlling that, they're trying to keep the herds down because there's too many for the space that they're at. So that's another reason why they're there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
they do these big roundups.
They do the big roundups for the wild horses. And then there's the loopholes, which I believe the roundup incentive program, the BLM adoption incentive program, I think they're ending it. I think that actually got canceled.
Oh, really? Oh, there's some big thing I've seen in the news just recently, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. But now you've got, 60,000 wild horses sitting in holding pens with nobody that wants them.
Yeah, it's terrible.
So, that's insane to me. 60,000 horses sitting there.
Yeah, it's hard to believe there's even 60,000 horses in the U.S. I mean, really, if you think about it. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's just crazy. And they're having babies. That's not just like 60,000. Like 95% of the female horses they're rounding up, including yearlings, are pregnant.
It's just sad. I don't even like thinking about it personally. And you live it daily.
Yeah.
We're getting long now. So, but there's a couple things I want to go over.
Yeah.
One is I know you've got a big fundraiser coming up. And by the way, you guys have to go to the website, and you can be more specific here in a second, Tahlia, but it's AllSeatedinaBarn. But I keep seeing all this stuff on social media and we joked about it the other day, but you have a sock, by the way, and I love the background on the sock thing. So they have socks you guys can buy with their name, and you wanted to sock it back to the guys, which is so funny to me. I love that. So I'm gonna tell you a real quick story, and I don't want to take up a lot of time.
Yeah.
So when I moved from California to Texas, right? And so when I moved here, and it's relative, sort of everything if I say it, it's relative. But anyways, when I moved here, they have a beer here, and I know you don't drink beer, but they have a beer here in Texas called Shiner,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a dark beer, and it took me months, if not a year or so, and it's a good beer. Not that you drank it, but anyways, I always thought, what a clever name, like getting a Shiner for somebody punching in the eye. I thought it was named after that. So when I read your thing about sock, because I'll sock you in the face kind of thing, I said, oh, it's kind of similar to the way I think, at least. But totally, I thought and everybody said, you're such a Californian. I said, well, I think there's a town called Shiner. That's where it's from. But I literally forever thought it was, oh, Shiner, what a great name for a beer. I really thought it was. And so the sock thing. So tell everybody the sock thing. I know you got a big fundraiser, because I know one of your socks is for Lincoln too. So start with socks, go to Lincoln and tell them what you're doing.
Yeah, I was sitting on the airplane coming home, and I was so irritated just after this specific auction because of just, you see so much abuse and neglect, and it's so frustrating. And I was like, God, I just want to sock people in the face. It makes me so mad. And then it just like a light bulb went off. And I was like, oh my God, I can literally sock people. We can send them out socks, and then they'll get so inundated with socks that they'll have to scan the QR code, and they're going to have to go learn about the industry, or at least pay some kind of attention to it, because they're getting socked left and right, literally.
Right.
So I came up with this whole idea, and I got with our local, one of the local people here in town that, they create merchandise and stuff like that. And they thought it was funny, and they're like, well, let's try it. And it's actually doing amazing.
Yeah, I think it's clever.
Yeah, so people are loving the socks. We're selling over 1,000 pairs a month right now. And that's way more than I ever thought it would do. So I'm super grateful. it actually caught the attention of a girl, and that's where you might see the sock ads, because she built the Athletic Greens brand. She lives in New York.
AGI.
Yeah. So she built that because she believed in it. And so she knew my sister and was like, hey, I want to help your sister build this sock brand. I love what she's doing. And if this helps her with spreading awareness, I think it's awesome. And so she got a hold of me, and now she just kind of does these sock ads for me to help, spread the awareness and spread the campaign about what it's about. And here it is. You've been socked.
Yeah, I love it. Of course, I still believe that Steiner beer should be what I called it. But I think it's clever, and they're good. And, I think anytime when you're raising money, even though people sometimes you just you get something back for it, even though you're supposed to just get doing a good thing, giving somebody something they know is also going to a good cause. I think it's a great idea.
Absolutely. Yeah. Who doesn't like getting something? I mean, we all do by nature. It's like, oh, cool. I'll give you $10. You'll give me that. Great. Thank you.
Okay, so you now have because I just saw on your website you got a bunch of different new ones that just came in whenever that said new, but one of it is for Lincoln. So let's talk about Lincoln, and then let's talk about your fundraiser coming up.
Yeah, so Lincoln is an ex-bucking horse that we rescued. That's what happens to a lot of these. Not the pro ones you see at all the massive rodeos. They all actually get retirement, but all like the semi-pros always end up in the pipeline. And so we got Lincoln at the auction. We brought him in, and then we were like, what are we going to do with this bucking horse? He didn't want to be trained to be a riding horse, and he wasn't really a huge fan.
By the way, we're saying bucking.
Bucking, yes, not any other word. Bucking with a B.
B. Yeah.
And so Peyton had this amazing idea, and she said, let's try putting him with the Mustangs and see what happens, because we have this huge herd of Mustangs. And we were like, screw it. Let's try it. So we have the video of him running out of the trailer into this giant pasture where our Mustang herd is. And where these Mustangs do not like other horses. They will kick them out. They will shun them. They will starve them out. Like, they are very specific. And Lincoln literally runs through the herd like he just does not give a shit. And they all kind of look at him, and then they all just take off after him. And it was in that moment that he became their leader, and he literally owns the Mustang herd. Well, this brings us back to Lincoln colicked. So bad. And colic means an upset stomach in non-horse people terms.
Well, if you've had babies go through colic too.
Yeah. Yep. And so he colicked, and usually colic, in the best cases can be mitigated with medicine, with pain meds. But in Lincoln's case, he ended up twisting. So he had so much gas in his stomach that essentially it twisted his colon over. And that's when the horses either have to be put down, because you can't just twist it back. They won't just twist back. Or you have to go in and do surgery and untwist the intestines and hope to God that the blood comes back and they don't have any complications. Well, when they got in there to help Lincoln, he had 2 twists. These surgeries are between $10,000 and $20,000. These are not small surgeries. And they saved his life. It's the Oklahoma State University. They have an amazing surgery center, and they are used to dealing with these big kind of unhandled horses. And so they saved his life. And so they basically gave us a feeding program for Lincoln on how to slowly bring him back. And we've gotten to we're almost to the 3-month mark, but around the 2-month mark, he started acting just colicky again. We were trying to transition him basically over to the grass that he eats from these round bells that are in with the Mustangs. And he started getting like uncomfortable and pawing and wanting to lay down. And we were just kind of like, oh God. So we rushed him to the hospital, and they were like, he's colicking. Don't worry. It's just a gas colic. We're going to run fluids on him. We'll get him through it. But what were you feeding him? We were feeding him the coastal hay. We're transitioning him so we can put him back with the Mustangs. And they said, you're not going to be able to do that. His stomach clearly does not like this grass. So you're going to need to come up with an alternative feed program for him if you don't want to run into colic again. And so we're like, great, what are we going to do with him? This is his family. He loves his Mustangs. They love him.
Right.
And so we ran the numbers. The Mustang pasture's huge, and we can segment off basically 5 to 8 acres, build brand new pipe fencing because we don't want him to, the Mustangs to jump over or him to go through, and God forbid he gets into the coastal. So essentially, in order to get him as close as we can to his family, it's segmenting off a parcel of the Mustang pasture, putting pipe fencing in, building a brand new shelter for him. And that's going to cost between $7,000 and $10,000 to do it right. And so that's kind of like a new fundraiser we're going to be launching here soon, is to get this paddock built so Lincoln can get back to being by the family that he loves.
So when you do this, I mean, and where do people find everything? Is it on your website? Is that the best way to get a hold of it, find you guys? What's the best?
Yeah, well, social media is obviously the most present and is going 24/7, but the website will have a ton of information. It'll be on there. It'll also be on Facebook and on Instagram, on Patreon. It'll be sent out if people sign up to be in our newsletters. When we do bigger fundraisers like this for needs, it's always sent out in a newsletter. And then, of course, they can always reach out by email to see if there's anything at the time that they can donate specifically to.
And so for everybody that's listening, if you go to the description of the podcast, all that information is in there. But just give a couple of those addresses right now, Tahlia, just in case, just for that, so we can get it out there.
Yep. The website is AllSeatedinaBarn.com. And then on Instagram and Facebook, we're All Seated in a Barn. And then on YouTube, we're All Seated in a Barn. And then our email is info@AllSeatedinaBarn. So it makes it pretty easy.
Are you guys on TikTok too?
We are, but I don't use it because I hate it and I am not good at it.
You're not opinionated at all. Not at all. Not even a little bit.
I tried for TikTok and nothing would ever hit. We'd get like 5 views. And I was like, this is such a waste of my time.
Okay. So here we're running out of time. So it's time to tell the joke. You're making me tell the joke. And and first off, for everybody listening, we all know that if you listened before that I hate doing this and I always want somebody else to do it. So if you guys have grandkids, nieces, nephews, kids, or you want to be on the show and tell a joke, please email me at mkyle@thefurrealpodcast.com. And I promise you, I will let you tell the joke, because people like these guests are supposed to tell the jokes, make me tell them. Anyway, so here's our joke for the day, and we'll go from there. So I'm asking you this, Tahlia. What is the hardest key to turn?
The hardest key to turn.
Like a door, turn your key in a door or something.
One that doesn't have a lock to go into?
No, it's called a donkey.
Oh.
There you go.
Good.
Anyway.
Yes, good joke.
As I say goodbye to everybody, first of all, Tahlia, I know you're real busy. Thank you so much for telling your story.
Welcome.
You guys that are listening, please keep follow her and do a bunch of stuff. But really, Tahlia, thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It was great.
Yeah, well, it's really fun. And then for everybody else that's listening, please keep listening. Please spread the word, because you know what? For a lot of reasons. One is the more people listen, the better for the podcast. But the other thing is we get stories out like this where you hear her story if you're not listening. So please pass the word out. Keep listening. But most importantly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. For real.
That concludes this episode of For Real with your host, Markakyle. For previous and future episodes of For Real, listen via all major podcast streaming sites.